He does not deserve to be serving, in my view, as an elected representative with the just absolutely immoral response he had to what is obviously a moral crisis for this country, to have another assassination, we've had these attempted assassinations. We had an attempted assassination of the Speaker of the House of Virginia a couple of years ago by anti-Semitic guys who were after her. She was the first woman who served in that role, and a Democrat. We had just a few months ago the firebombing of the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. We have, as you point out, Nadine, an extraordinary amount of violence coming from the right wing, actually from people who are supporters of Donald Trump. And yet we have an administration that appears to be standing down investigations into hate crimes. Any efforts really by the FBI to be involved in a longstanding set of work to deal with the reality in this country, which is that the violence hails predominantly from the right wing in this country, as we saw, on January 6th. But the fact that we did not have a unifying moment, that we don't have a president who has the character to stand up and speak out against this violence on behalf of all of America, is also a tragedy.
Yeah. I mean, part of me says there's something so fundamentally broken in him that it doesn't register what a decent thing to do might be. It's like occasionally you watch him struggle to mimic human emotion of empathy, but mostly he doesn't bother. But I think the thing that is critical for people to understand is that Mike Lee is moving in circles that have normalized the way he's speaking. He is moving in circles where it is very clear that this kind of violence, this is encouraged. They want to see people afraid in public. They want to see people afraid to be in places where they might encounter this kind of violence. And, it is a page out of the authoritarian playbook that you foment this kind of, stochastic violence so that it doesn't have to be done under the color of law. But it can have that same purpose. And that is why, to me, the June 14th is such an important contrast, because you have, even the assassination attempts against Trump, such as they were, when you trace the people responsible, you still end up with white men, radicalized right-wingers, who, for whatever reason, were in the role of I won't go down that road, but we understand that it keeps being a predictable demographic driven by predictable politics. And I think what we saw with Trump commandeering the 250th anniversary of the Army, what should have been a celebration of the Army, and turning it into his own personal birthday parade, is an example of, once again, wanting to send this message, as bullies do, of might, of it was a flex, or it was intended to be a flex. And so what I love about the parade was what everybody saw was far from a flex. When you think about that parade, and you might, have in your mind images of, North Korea or the Soviet Union, or any place where dictators have these crisply marching, soldiers with this intimidating display of political military might, this was the exact opposite of it. First of all, it was sparsely attended. The soldiers were not marching crisply. And I say this as somebody who, went to the Air Force Academy, went through boot camp, went through basic training, knows how much you are drilled to be able to do that. I guarantee there's not a soldier, a service member in any branch who cannot march crisply. And the fact that they didn't tells us something, whether it is malicious compliance or anger that suddenly, if Father's Day weekend was taken over by this narcissist, or poor planning on the part of a Department of Defense that has been stripped bare of so much of its leadership by Hegseth. All of these things combine to turn it not only do people think of it as the opposite of a show of strength. The emblematic symbol for that parade was a lone, squeaky tank rolling down the street with a street so empty that you could hear its wheels turn. And so I think that there is something in the contrast between that and the No Kings, millions upon millions of Americans taking to the street for the No Kings protest, the largest, by all accounts, the largest protest in American history, especially I think of Minnesota. I think of Minnesota where people were told, hey, listen, this guy's still on the loose. He's killed popular, beloved Democrats. It is too dangerous to assemble. And they said, you know what? We're going and you won't stop us. And Minnesota's capital had an amazing turnout. And that is the spirit that we have to have, that we will not back down. We will not be fearful. We will turn our anger and our grief and our rage into action.